this radio is going to act as the PA because we want to make experience. So someone will be in charge of that in front. We will.
I'm going to leave a note next to my no, I know, but I'm just saying. Yeah, you're right. We just have to figure this out. This is not. Yeah, I can't.
So we're going to
I get one leg out.
That's always good.
That's a door clock.
You have them observe. So the YouTube link worked yesterday. It's not working right now. I'm going to have them observe from the hallway if that's okay, because of the nature of the number of people we have. They're going to fix that for the next section.
All right, guys. All right, the first scenario we're going to do, real simple, traditional lockdown. Don't use anything we discussed as far, and I apologize too with this. We'll go over some of the ways to enhance lockdown at additional training. But for right now, we begin kind of the basics. This first scenario, though, traditional lockdown. I want you to do exactly how we do now. There's an interior threat is all you have at this point, somewhere in the building. It's all you have. Lockdown, interior threat. I want you to lock down as we have been doing. In other words, if you have a teacher here, get your students into a corner, have them proceed into a corner, out of sight of the door, and have them huddle down and just stay there. Out of sight, lights off, traditional lockdown. You will hear in the hallway air horns, things like that, like gun blasts. We're simulating our guns with air horns, just so you know. So there's no projectiles. We're not doing. We're going to have to be jumping under desks and everything and injuring people. This is not that physical today. Believe it or not, we can do a lot of this not being that physical. So traditional lockdown is what we're doing first and foremost. Everyone have that. This side of the room is one classroom. Please, for the purposes of this, imagine this wall is still here. We initially planned something, but due to technical difficulties, we weren't able to pull this off. So this is going to be one classroom. Just picture this as a separate classroom here on the other side. We can't see them, all right? So if something happens in here, guys, you just carry on with your lockdown like you would normally in the building, however you would do that, all right? Any questions? Okay.
So again,
Be a teacher?
PA system.
Someone want to be a teacher?
It's my phone activated code red.
No, it's gonna.
You'll hear an announcement in the hallway. You will hear an announcement in the PA system out in the hallway. It's not going to be over the top. We're not broadcasting it outside the building. We don't want to.
That's my choice.
The building's still functioning. So I don't want to startle too many people. You'll hear an announcement. React like you're in class. We have a teacher over here.
Steiner.
Steiner. Lou, teacher. All right. So you guys are the students. React the way to the teacher, what they tell you to do. Traditional lockdown, what we've trained to do, what we practiced to do so far. All right, corny as it may seem and everything, I wish we had something that was a little bit more realistic, but you know what, I'll take something. But that was just a traditional lockdown. And I know but it's how we practice right now. Greeny, where you at? As a shooter, if you were the one doing that, how easy was it for you to go around the room and find your targets?
Yeah, I could be the worst shot on the planet and take a ton of people huddled in a mass.
And him going bang, bang, I heard the shots and everything. And I said 1 shot every 4 seconds. It doesn't happen like that in the real world. 1 shot every 4 seconds is an average. Actually, I mean, the shots are going to come a lot faster. And in crowds like that, when we're huddled together, massed together, static, sitting there, 1 shot can hurt 2 people or more. Not very difficult for you. You think you can accomplish your target? Ms. Ruth.
Do you think, like, what would you say your ratio was of success?
Oh, it probably would have been 20, 25 people in no time at all.
In about 20 seconds is all he was in each room. 20 seconds, that's a traditional lockout. His ability to succeed. Now granted, for this purpose, he had keys and everything to the room, but assume your door is not even locked. Assume he's able to walk in. Assume there's not even, think about the possibility of not even hearing the announcement. You're the first room that actually causes the lockdown. The success that someone would have in that without any preparation even. Guys, what do you think? How effective do you feel that was protecting you? You sure? Because this is what we've been teaching our students. This is what we've been practicing. The ability, this is a standard lockdown.
So in the whole process, when we're thinking about this as an entire group, obviously there's some pieces to this that are not wholly realistic. But when we think about this on our daily activities, student tries to go to the bathroom, we leave the door open so we don't have to open it. Okay? In passing time, okay? The doors are just wide open. There's a lot of scenarios when we're thinking about the daily convenience of our lives as teachers that the simple act of the locked door is taken away. And the reality of most of our day, it is so regimented. We operate in a school building where the expectation is everything takes place on a schedule. But there are many times where the schedules are kind of a little awry. So when we think about this from the perspective of our training right now, not to say I'm thinking like this, but Spartan period is the greatest time if you're going to do something like this. Because most of our doors are in a constant state of opening and closing. And we're not always attuned as the people in the classroom to make sure the door is closed, because we're doing 50 other things. But there's simple things that we're talking about that will help ensure that process.
Try to focus on your classrooms individually either. This is, again, for all purposes, that is a teacher's classroom. This is a teacher's classroom. Again, we have our support staff here. We have IAs. They don't have a classroom. None of, as teachers too, you might be in a different assignment in the gym, in the cafeteria, in the library, no matter where that is. Anywhere can be your classroom. That's the mindset I want you to get in here too, because it's not just a lockdown in your classroom, it's a lockdown potentially anywhere in the building, wherever you are. This is a traditional one. Again, if that were to happen and someone were to come in, you know it's not real. Fear is a multiplier with that too, and that chaos that ensues with that. This is what you want to start thinking about and preparing yourself for. Be ready to prepare your students for as well too. Nothing can. I'm going to tell you that right now. That is those, excuse my French, that is those oh shit moments in life that no one can prepare for. But when that happens, you have, if you go through it in your mind, if you go through and start thinking about what to do, you can actually do something different. We're going to do another scenario now. We're going to break up. We're going to do the next one.
So we're going to do an improvised lockdown with the enhanced components. So for this one, we're still not using the countermeasures. So you're going to be in your room with the same groups of people. And you're going to devise a plan to improvise and barricade the door. Obviously be respectful to your colleagues' classrooms, but you can use the desks, you can use other things in here, okay, that will help you. The key with this, and what's really important, and Sean and I can speak to this, there's 25 people in this room, 30 people in this room. From our experience getting trained and from Officer McLaughlin's experience getting trained, if it is 25 people thinking independently, you're not going to create a barrier. This is a great team building, teamwork activity. You must work in a group, and it has to be quickly, and it has to be coordinated. So, there's a lot of chiefs in this room. Okay, the reality of the scenarios that you're going to have in your classrooms is you're going to be the leader. Okay, you're the leaders in the classroom. But for this scenario, you need to work together, develop a plan quickly while communicating on this piece. So just to reiterate, we're going to come, you'll be back in your rooms, an announcer will come over the walkie-talkie, explain there's an intruder. The information will get more robust as we get into these next, because the goal is hopefully that the information gets more robust as we go. That being said, quickly moving. Again, what is in these rooms or what is in these rooms? All I did this morning with the help of the guys in the facilities, we opened the door and we twisted these desks to view this way. Okay, this is what these rooms look like. These rooms are crowded. So there's a lot of stuff in here. You need to figure out a way.
Up with some extra classes or extra in-services to kind of discuss some things that you can do. And I don't believe in throwing you out cold to the wolves, but if you look around, you take 2 seconds. Preparation, again, I start planning well before any incident, even before I'm told there's an incident, I'm already planning. But just looking around this room already, right away, I recognize the cart over there with an extension cord as something you can use to secure a door. Think about, you have to start thinking about each of your rooms. And when I say rooms, again, wherever you are, the rooms that you're in, the rooms that you possibly will be in. The doors open out, not in. So use that, keep that in mind. They're the things that I think about when you come in here. I don't just think about the exits and exits. I see window there. I see window on the other side there because I can see light. I can't even see the window. I see those. I see the glass on the side as a potential weak point that a body can fit through. Again, doors opening in versus out is something as a concern. Goggler, again, talk to the guys that have those mechanically little ingenious minds. Again, I can only guess what he thinks about at home when he has free time. But, and I won't say anything on camera here. But again, things that you can use, extension cords. Tech is not going to be happy you using the extension cord to tie something down on a day-to-day basis. But in an instant, Eric, do you have a problem with them using this if it's a life or death situation? No.
And pretty much every person in here has a belt.
Yes.
So the classic thing is your belt is made of leather, and it's much stronger than a lot of things.
Again, I don't know.
And I will tell you that.
Well, yeah.
When Sean and I did this training, if you're in a door that has an actuator,
yes,
you can take your belt and tie it around the actuator.
Everyone know what an actuator is in a door. We just saw, you just would have seen them. If we go back into the auditorium or some of the different rooms, if you ever see those doors in the top corner, they have those blocks with like the V arm on it that pulls the door shut. When a door is shut, when a door is in a shut position, the actuator is pulled tight. You can take a belt, you can take a cord, and if you wrap that around several times real tight and tie it, you might be able to open the door's lock, but it's only going to open about this much. And that's as far as it's going to be allowed to open. They can yank on that. I can yank on it all I want. They had me do that in my training when I went through it, and I couldn't get through it. Now again, can you shoot through it? Yes, eventually. That would take a lot to do that because most people on the outside of the door wouldn't even be thinking about that. You can take this cord, quite frankly, again, be creative. You can take this cord, wrap it around the doorknob a couple times, and then tie it to another cord or a desk, slide the desk over across this door, and prevent something to keep it from opening. Again, can a shot deter that? Yes, but you're giving him that time that he's taking that you can prepare inside. So for right now, we're just countering. We're not countering with presence. We're not countering the person. We're just going to try to barricade. Try to be creative. There's a lot of desks in here. There's a lot of weight in here. I just talked with one of the staff members in there. You saw me in the presentation as he was talking. I took those big tables and laid in front of the door. That would have done nothing preventing him from opening a door because those doors opened out. But what it would have done is prevented a barricade in there that when the person came in, it would have caused him a second or 2 seconds or 5 seconds to climb over, possibly cause him to trip. How many parents do we have in this room right now? How many times have you ever gone through a room and stepped on your kids' toys and tripped on them? Same thing. I don't care. It can be a big barricade, but if there's a bunch of stuff in front, even Death smiled up and saw that picture, that is still effective to buy you time. Again, but you ultimately want to be as secure as you can, but quite frankly, seconds count. You also want to do something, come up with something as fast as you can. So think about what's around you, the tools you have available to you.
So go back to your rooms.
One second.
Okay.
Just review ground rules for the scenario. It is a classroom environment. So when you go back in the room, please don't start barricading. It's a classroom environment until you get an alert. Do not barricade right away. We'll give you a minute or two to look around and orient, see what's in the room. But it's a classroom environment up until the point you get the information.
And the link is now working. Mr. Bryce is setting it up so that the people that are in the, we're going to go in this room. You can go to Mrs. Im's room. The link is working for those 5 or 6 people. Okay, back to the rooms you were in.
All right, guys, this is actually but because of this link, because of the link that we have here, obviously the tripod, there are cables coming off this, and this computer set up here. This is out of play. I apologize, but you know what? I'm going to give you some bonus here. This is compensate. But this here has to stay here just for the purposes of recording. I apologize about that, but so you know, please keep it out of play. Remember, this is just, Mr. Designer, this is just barricading drills right now. No, and I appreciate that. But you know what? That I said normal response he would do. And that's the response he would do. There are people that would do that. And quite frankly, I don't care if it's Mr. Designer or if it's Senora Schwartz. The people that are sometimes the most bravest in these critical incidents are the ones that would surprise you the most.
I'm moving this here. I'm showing this. Okay, that's the most appropriate.
Sharice shows them he may get it
Everybody in the corner. I'll sacrifice myself because you guys barricaded me to a wall. That's all right.
Now we can hit him with the desk.
At this point.
Bang! 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 Thanks, guys. You're all right. Bang! Bang! Bang!
Good job.
Hey, I sacrificed myself. Whoever tied your door, stop. You couldn't get to it. You fabricated it
I don't want to damage the laptop over here, so make sure that doesn't fall with you.
What do you care? You're not coming back.
Someone do that.
Not the doll.
All right, good.
All right.
All right, guys.
So any general reactions?
The only difference with that was just a little bit more of an enhanced lockdown. There was no other principle, you just incorporated one more principle into it. Greeny, you're our shooter.
I might have got 3 or 4 people, and one was Steiner, who was laying in front of the window over
All
there.
right, we're pausing here.
He got barricaded in the
Wait. Steiner, where are you?
He's dead.
Come forward, sir, for a second. Yes. Why did you lay in front of the door, though? I don't believe anything's funny and everything. There are funny things, but even silly things. My question was why?
Well, at
Why
that
were you laying in
point,
front of the
I
door?
built the barricade. I was over on that side. The only way for me to get out was to push the barricade over. So at that point, it was just to try to get down, and hopefully he doesn't see me as he's coming in the room.
Again, logical. And in a situation like that, you might be pitted with those weird things where it's like, oh crap. Just as an example, from a tactical position, looking outside, we started trying to call off where the shooter was. You heard the gunshots in the hallway. You might not know how close that shooter is, and you might have to be prepared. Is that he's getting closer? Is being close to the door a good thing at that point, or do we need to start removing ourselves from that potential threat? Maybe, again, I didn't know what to expect from him. Maybe, again, I know he went a little farther the last time than what was instructed, but he didn't go farther than what I would expect of him in that situation. When I asked him why he picked up the desk the last time, he told me, well, that's what I would do in a regular lockdown if this happened. Fair enough. Not even going to question him. Again, I gave him the instructions, but that's his reaction. I'm not going to take away that from him in the training. As long as he can explain that and share it with other people. Maybe I've seen that type of response before, not the instructions, but they may try to prepare for something else. Like coming in, when the person comes in, is he's trying to work that security measure, countering them some other way, which we'll discuss in our next practice. But target-wise?
Yeah, it was much better. The tying the door shut or securing the door was huge, because even once the barricades are there, if you get the door open, there's still so many people you can see in spots. But like that first one over there was really tight.
Awesome. He gagged at it and came to a stop. It actually looked like it stopped you in your tracks. Almost kind of shocked you a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was huge. Now here, apparently, they barricaded first, then tried to tie the door shut. That didn't work out.
Keep in mind,
They didn't tie it to anything. So
time is just as critical, not only for us, but time is also critical.
I was shocked that it just opened.
Time is just as critical, not only for us in trying to prepare for something like this. The amount of time we have to put certain countermeasures into place, to take certain actions, but time is also critical for the shooters. Statistically speaking, if a shooter comes to a door and tries that door and is unable to get in, statistically, he will move on to find a less vulnerable target, or more vulnerable target. He'll try to find something that he can challenge and succeed successfully, because the goal is to inflict harm, unless it's a targeted thing. But again, we work on the worst case scenario. The door tied, great. Lesson can be learned from here. You guys, this class, you tried to tie the door, correct?
We got really focused on what we were going to do with the desks, and we sort of forgot about the time. Even though you gave us the answer.
It looked like you tried.
Yeah.
Again, you still put a physical barricade up. Still took you more time to get to what you needed to do, right?
Well, that was still. I mean, I had keys. So I mean, if I was a true, lunatic midget running around, and I didn't have keys, I mean, if I get to that door and it's tight and there's a barricade there, I mean, I'm moving on. So I mean, all 4 of these, I think I would have moved on from.
And you want to also keep in mind that if you plan on something like that, you plan on that one action, that one tie. That's great that you've tied the door, but what else? And this, as a cop, I always tell people, I plan on the worst case scenario. I like to have a backup plan. I like to have a backup plan for my backup plan. I carry one gun that you see, but I know I have a second backup plan should that first backup plan fail. Most people are like, I didn't even know that. But again, that's not the only thing that's available to me. The more tools you have, having tools are great. The more tools you use can make you safer. Have a plan, a backup plan to follow up on. Again, that's why having one thing against the door, one security measure was fine, but that failed. At least the desks solved you up a little bit more too. I saw you had to lean over.
Yeah, if I would have tried to push through, probably would have stumbled and fallen or whatever, and then you give people the opportunity to file the rabbit.
An active shooter might be he's carrying one gun. That might be what he's doing. He might be carrying multiple guns and several hundred rounds or 1,000 rounds of ammunition, which is heavy. Again, slowing him down, having to do simple tasks like that start to affect that OODA loop we talked about.
So the next scenario is very similar to this one, but we're going to add the countering option of using the softer items in the classroom that you have in there, as opposed to, again, very big point of emphasis. We're not throwing books. We're not throwing staplers.
Safety officer, the only thing they're going to be thrown in this exercise are what we provide you with. Please do not freestyle here.
The options here, lockdown or counter.
Lockdown or counter. Take your choice. All we're doing
Or both.
Correct. Or both. You're trying to finish. Lockdown or counter. But remember, what we told you in the training, ALICE is a whole acronym. It can be taken as whole, can be taken in part, or can be taken in any different way. So I want you to go through this. Lockdown, enhanced lockdown, or counter. All right? Or counter, or both. Or all of them. Your choice with this. You decide what you feel you want to do. Because in a situation like this, you might have someone that stands up and says, listen, I want to go at this guy. You might have someone that says, I don't want, wait a minute, I'm too scared. I can't even operate this. As soon as the gunshot, she might be under the desk, no offense. And you might have someone that says, let me at him, I want to kill him. No. Again, people are different in different situations, especially stressful situations. I have seen cops that have trained with me that talk about being the bravest person on the face of the earth, that panic when stuff happens. I've seen a cop loading shells into a shotgun, and when something happens, he's sitting there racking the shotgun, and bullets are flying out, the shells are flying out, but nothing's going off. Because panic. Anyone that says they're not scared in situations like that, they're lying to you. Be prepared. Think about the things you would do. Don't think about one thing. Again, plan for failures. Plan to survive. All right? So again, enhanced lockdown or counter, whichever you choose to do, or both. But again, safety-wise, no throwing bottles, no throwing keys, purses, radios, shoes, desks.
We'll have to do this weekend.
Just the item provided, all right? Break your classes.
All right. Yeah.
has to be like somebody passes it. So honestly, building the barrier should be somebody who's stronger than I am because stuff can get
That's planning.
All right, well, teach us about math.
They already took their belts off.
It's a new concept the other day in the gym.
Oh, you didn't take yours off?
Tie down barricade. And the barricade, we're just put like a low level, just so he has to step over something. Because don't forget, if you barricade stuff, he can still stick a gun in and fire you, and whatever you're throwing at him is probably not going to do anything. As soon as he started, he was already out here. So there was 0 time.
Something's got to be done quick. Okay, we're going to come back together.
Troy wins. Troy wins the award. You look like you're doing your own no.
Yeah, all right.
They told me to get it before everything goes out.
We had a plan. You got us first.
You're right.
Casualty. I said he's going to be 3 or 4 weeks off.
All right, guys.
All right, I know that's fun. Big drink, Lou. Everyone peg the hand of Lou. You want to All right, now, couple things. Grady, we'll go to you first.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. As we went, we kind of threw a wrench into it and everything. You guys kind of thought you would have time to prepare.
No, it's not.
Okay, well, you didn't have no time. Did you
Yeah.
think initially you did? Like, okay, we're gonna get this done?
We had a plan and it totally failed.
Fantastic, because again, you heard that the person was down by the library. He gave you like 5 seconds. But I gotta say, Green, did you expect that door to even be partially defeated in that short of time?
No, because until people process that, I mean.
So success in that, you shocked me. But I will say this too, you don't know, you will hear, there's a possibility, and this is why I say, please be alert. There's a possibility you'll hear about a shooter in the gym. And when you think you can get out, that's why you have to be alert, be aware, all your senses and everything quiet, and encouraged, because little things could be important. And before you even go to the door, you might want to take a look out, because guess what? There may be a second person right outside the door.
Right. And just so everyone's aware, the other rooms, so when we made the call, we had told Matt to take 15 seconds before he came to this room. Okay? So just because the person could be running, they could be doing all these other things. So while everyone else is preparing in their other rooms, they had slid a couple things in front of the door, and he was already there. And then they quickly were starting with the counter side of it.
Starting with this room, Matt.
The biggest thing was, like, as soon as I came in, I mean, I came in with the gun first, and Troy just, like, grabbed my arm, which I wasn't ready for that, you know, and next thing you know.
He actually kept going, kind of playing like it was for real, but I can guarantee you, when Troy grabbed him, there's no way. I mean, by then, someone would have been on top of him, other people would have been on top of him. I would damn near say that Troy would have ended that with the assistance of maybe 1 or 2 other people leading into that, and that's what you may have.
3 or 4, you didn't need.
Understand? Very small ones. No, believe it or not, again, it doesn't take much. People look at size as a determining factor. I don't care. I joked about Danica before this. No. She has just as much ability to bring an incident to a stabilized finish as anybody else does. Because again, disarming him, interrupting his OODA loop, interrupting his plans can be just as shocking. Maybe she disarms him and he runs down the hallway and panics because now his whole plan's off because his target may have been in this room. He doesn't know what he did. Maybe she forced that ending. Maybe he forced that ending. But again, be prepared for things like that. When you counter, think about how you're going to counter. Again, we can cover this in more detail in later lessons. But when the first thing, if you think that's an option, again, I'm not teaching you to be trained combatants, but understand the first thing that's usually going to be clearing this door is what? The gun. And if you can get a hold of that gun somewhere, if that can be happening, I'm not going to guarantee you that you're going to be able to do that safely. But if you can get a hold of that in some way, Troy, you did it excellent. I mean, textbook. I mean, pushed it away, grabbed onto it and everything, and that wasn't going anywhere. But if you can do that, fantastic.
What was the experience like in the Chinese room? Anyone? Go ahead.
We had a fire extinguisher.
Awesome. And I saw that. I actually, in the incident, as he comes in, I saw something out the corner of the room. It's just a little black tube. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I'm looking. Kenny, where are you? Explain what you did. What were you doing?
Took the fire extinguisher off the wall. I just hit around the corner and just shot the hose right at him.
And what would you have done if that was real and he came in? Because I know this is training and you didn't do it, thank God. Was that?
Squirted him, probably just jacked him up after.
Has anyone ever seen an ABC dry chemical fire extinguisher blast off before? You guys would have had a hard time breathing in that classroom. And you would have had a hard time breathing in the hallway. Not only that, the guy would have been blind. It would have been like going into a dust storm, a fine dust storm without glasses or goggles. Or think of it this way, going into a sandstorm with contacts in and your eyes open. That's what that would have felt like. That was awesome. Not only that, but after he extinguishes it in the guy, he now has a 20-pound mallet in his hand for countering. Again, think about what's in it. That was awesome. Again, it can blind someone, whether it's dry chem, whether it's CO2. You're interrupting that person's inability to see. That could buy someone time, not just to counter the person and get on them. That could be the time you need to push by him and have your kids start getting past and getting the hell out of this trap here.
This is House's room. What was it like in your room?
Yeah, we were
drill was over.
Yeah, the drill was over before we were even finished, but, so it was clear that the intruder had them taken out somewhere.
But let me ask this question. It's a fair question to make. Having that option, and this is a question I can pose to everyone, having those options from where we first started with the enhanced lock, or just a regular lockdown, traditional lockdown, he didn't make it to your room. But I'll ask your class this, since we haven't really focused there. How did you feel the difference, knowing that you could do something? Did you feel any more confident?
Yeah.
Being able to do something, can make you feel a lot different. Having those options, again, maybe you'll need them, maybe you won't. But being able to take an action, knowing that you can, and again, these again are soft balls. These are nothing. I mean, they can hit me, and it's barely even going to faze me, especially if you know it. But if you don't know what's being thrown at you, or what's being tossed at you is harder, larger, sharper, it's going to start causing issues. Having those options available to you, these are the options that you can do instead of just sit there, and you should be doing. Even in a regular lockdown, start with the regular lockdown, but then do more. Anyone else have any things they want to offer, differences from the first lockdown to the last?
So one of the things that Kathy and I have talked about, and I think this is one of the difficult things about this as well, is that because we are all educators and we are all in this because we are, supporting children and so forth. Sometimes that active shooter may be a student that we know. And what's going to be your first instinct, right? I know my first instinct is I'm going to want to talk to them. Why are you doing this, right? Or give me the gun or whatever it is, because that's a student. And it struck me at that point when you were saying about the fact of I have a fire extinguisher and I've now used that fire extinguisher and now I have a 20-pound weapon that I can now hit. I'm going to be honest with you, it'd be really hard for me to hit a student. Like, it would be really, really hard for me.
We're trained to do complete opposites. Once you get the spray, you want to.
Well, right.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Come on, guys, please.
But that's what you have to, that's part of shifting your thinking, right? When that person is there and that person has a weapon, that person is not a student at that point. That person is a threat, and that person is a threat to you, and that person is a threat to staff, and that person is a threat to other children that are in your care, right? So that is something, again, like, as you think and as you process through this, that's something to keep in mind in terms of shifting mindsets when you get into these types of situations. Again,
We're told every day in hallways that you don't, I'm not, but you're encouraged as teachers, and I get that. You want to be very careful. This is where the liability bug kicks in, where you're taught, well, hey, there's a fight in the hallway. Be careful about getting involved. Because if you touch one of them, all the parents are going to be upset. Doc's making a very valid point here. This is not a fight. This is not a disciplinary issue. I'm talking about a critical incident, and there is a distinct difference. Where someone is demonstrating, if they're inside the school and they have a gun, that is a completely different incident than someone just standing up and saying, I'll kick your ass. It's a totally different scenario. And you may have to respond different. Some people, you know what, if it works, awesome, but I'm not optimistic on that, talking to someone now at that point, if they're willing to do that. You need to consider that. It's a situation where you can protect yourself. And even above that, why are we here as teachers? Why are we here as staff? Who are we here for? The students. It's not just that one, it's the other 1,200.
I'll just think impact question, like what about kids who go with the class? I'm evacuating and the kid doesn't want to go. Or I'm staying and the kid doesn't want to stay.
Well, you have to use the best judgment, and you're going to have that. You're going to have kids that are doing it not because they want to comply. You'll have kids that'll do that just because they're scared to death. Let's go. We're leaving the classroom. We're getting out now. He's down there. The kids, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
Do you go with the kids that are evacuating, or do you stay with that kid?
Again, there's a judgment call you're going to have to get. I mean, frankly, especially that's a the grade level I think you have to assign. But if you're asking me as a police officer, you have a lot of more self-directed learners here. Again, communicate. I would have the kids. We'll discuss this in further, like how much you interact with the class later on with other classes. But if you have a high school student, I can tell my high school student, okay, Maureen, listen, our evacuation point is down the middle school. If you can get there, we're going out this door now. We're going to be class. We're going to be going out there, out that door, and down the hall. Make a right, head down the middle school as fast as you can. Keep your hands in the air. Run as fast as you can down to the middle school. Don't stop until you get to the middle school. So when you say that, and she says, and then everyone else stands up and does it, and she's standing there not complying, well, you might have, do I feel that those high school students here in this building are capable of doing that action on their own? Yeah. If you feel that you need to stay with that person, that's your call. But understand that dynamic is changing. I would encourage that person. Usually you as a leader are able to direct people like that. In that situation, you might have to be pointed with someone. Again, I very rarely yell. But if I have no problem to just say, you need to get you out of the seat right now, we're going.
And the other reality is there's potential, depending on the situation, when you go into the hallway, there will be people dead in the hallway. So that's the other piece that we're not thinking about and talking about, but you will be moving students potentially past friends and teachers and other people that they know and love and care about deeply. And this is where then they stop in the hallway.
You're going to have people begging you for help in a situation like this. Begging you for help.
Question, Brian?
Is this, so in, God forbid, we're in an emergency, is this the first time we're talking to kids about this? Or is there going to be some type of training or conversation we're having with?
I'll leave the superintendent answer. We're going to be discussing that more as it goes on. This is the first step. The first step that we need to start training, we need to come into compliance, but this is a first step. I'll leave the superintendent answer that.
So, as he said, this is the first step. The goal ultimately down the line, especially with high school age students, is that they should be involved in this. There should be a training that's done in the same way as we train students for fire drills and other things. But obviously there has to be a process. We can't go from zero to training our students immediately. We have to get our community on board, parents have to be involved, and obviously all students need to be involved, but it's very different K3 than it is here with you guys and the high school students. But absolutely, eventually students need to be involved. The other thing I wanted to mention as we're talking about all of this, and we're talking about some really, really upsetting topics, and you start to talk about people in the hallways and those kind of things. I think the mindset that I've always used when doing anything like this is, you're kind of talking about a two-part process. Right now, you're talking about survival. Recovery is a different thing. So you're talking about survival, and you're talking about your goal in this and everything you're being trained to do is to survive. If this would ever happen anywhere, that's phase one. The second phase is all the support, all the resources we pull in, all the things we do to deal with it afterwards. So this is a slice of it. I know it's all the stuff to think about, but you almost have to compartmentalize and say, okay, phase one is how do we get as many people out as possible? And then we're going to have to come back, and do a lot of work, obviously, and communities that have been through this a long, long time to heal. But those services come in after. The first thing you're thinking is get as many people as we can safe, and then. So.
You are the group leaders. You are the team leaders. You are the safety officers. You are in loco parentis, and you are the parents. And so, as such, you're the first line that we want to hit with this, because whether it's a fire drill, whether it's an active shooter, no matter what it is, you are the ones the students are going to look for right now. So, quite frankly, if this were to happen tomorrow, or I should say on Tuesday, when we come back in the building, and this were to happen, I would hope you'll be able to start thinking about and employing some of the items, even though we're still going to be working on putting more policies out and everything to reflect the practices, those guidelines for you. I hate the guidelines because, again, I despise giving someone a guideline in a critical incident because they want to go to a flip chart and they want to flip through it. But it's not going to happen that way. How this is going to happen, again, in my mind, comes a lot of different ways. It's going to be, we might get a fire alarm go out, and when you walk out with your class, your kids, what happens again? It's the what ifs. I'm doom and gloom. I'm sorry. And I apologize to my wife, wherever she is, but she left to live in. But you might walk out in a fire drill and have a car explode out there. How many of your classes? I know this side goes out through the parking lot. You might go past a garbage can and that happens. You might walk through down to the grass there, and as you're walking down towards the cornfield in a nice open area, you start hearing, you may hear it, you may not, you'll see this child drop on the ground. And maybe you'll understand and recognize what it is. Maybe you'll look, it won't be until someone looks around and starts screaming that they see blood around them. But someone's shooting at the students. Columbine, that's one of the things they wanted to do. They had explosive devices and they wanted to set fire alarms off, get the kids to come out and pick them off as they came out. That was their plan. Plan failed. They went plan B. You have to improvise and be able to improvise. So if this happens tomorrow, I hope that you can take some of this that you're noticed. Be those leaders. Direct. Know that you have those options And you might have to, in a second, tell those kids what you need to do and start acting that way and doing those things. Again, starting to lock the door, but know that those gears have to plan because he didn't take 10 minutes to come down the hallway. He only took 15 seconds.
Let me just add one thing. As I was standing here processing, one other thing. We talked about students, we talked about how it needs to be students, K-12, and we will involve them. The other piece to that is a very, very sensitively done rollout with communication. So please don't kind of, obviously you guys are going to talk about this when you leave here and you're going to have debrief and that's fine. But please don't share it, oh yeah, to kids or to parents in the community, hey, we're going to start doing this with all our kids, because we need to control how that goes out. So if I'm a parent at home and I hear, you know, oh, we're going to start training kids to fight intruders, I'm going to freak out if it's not the message is control. So certainly, you know, please, you know, don't say, hey, we had this drill, and you guys are going to learn it soon or anything like that, because again, I just want to, I mean, certainly if students ever would bring this up for whatever reason, they shouldn't, but if any student, then the district has a plan, we're working through things, that's fine, but I wouldn't share details.
The first step is you have it. I give the example last year in the cafeteria when we had that fire drill, or whatever it was, when the fire alarm went off in the cafeteria. Again, the kids all stood up, they knew what they wanted to do, but they never drilled in the cafeteria before. So they stood up and they didn't know what the hell to do. And they started wandering, they didn't know which way to go. And they all started walking towards the entrance, and it only took me to yell, that way, get out! And every one of them turned and listened. Again, it was just in that situation. They didn't know what to do. They looked for direction. They looked for that direction. And parents, again, that's something I can appreciate what the superintendent and the administration has to deal with. Because if I went right now and made an individual contact with each parent and told them this is what we're doing, you'd have some parents that would be like, absolutely not. You'd have a higher percentage of the parents cooperating now just because of what happened last week across the country. Or if you explain it to them, you'll have a bigger percentage on board too. But just because the parents, again, my opinion, this as a police officer and local parentis, I applaud the school district for taking this action because my children go here. And quite frankly, if I have someone that doesn't want to protect my children, I don't want them in this building. That's my feeling. But parents, you have to approach it kind of one step at a time. Right now, you guys are the leaders. In that situation, we're giving you some other tools to throw in your toolbox.
Good segue. The final scenario. Sorry.
That's the way of saying shut up.
The final scenario is the operation of all three options, really. So you'll have the option of the lockdown, the enhanced lockdown, the counter, or the evacuate. It is important that.
I'll leave mine here too.
Yeah, we'll leave two.
We'll leave another one.
So, and I'll also, we can do it with a megaphone in the hallway, which will also do for that. So, any of those three options, it is very important that you don't necessarily use all the information you get. And that's the tough thing about this, is you're doing this through the initial reactions. I'm going to run right out. But I can speak to when Sean and I were through our training, you run out and you run into the gun pit.
Like I said, keep in mind, like happened here, you expected, again, the expectation was, because the way we described it to you, that you would have probably a couple seconds to get that like you had last time. We gave you an even shorter time than last time before you presented the challenge. This classroom, it sucks, but you're going to guys have to use that information available to you. If you hear that shooting right down the hallway from you, that might give you the idea that, listen, I can't go out in the hallway, but if he's shooting down here, he's not shooting here, so I continue to barricade and work on another means of escape.
We're not smashing windows.
No, that's my next one. We are not smashing windows. We are not going out the windows. But again,
1 second. Just now that all three options are in play, and notice your surroundings and the number of people that are participating in this drill. If you choose to evacuate, please move at about 60%. Just for safety's sake, if we all choose to evacuate, look how many people are here. That's a lot of people rushing through 4 doors. When you evacuate, you are out of the building when you get to the door. Please do not run out of the building and try to rally at the middle school. When you get to the door, you have evacuated. Again, all of the options are in place now. So I hate being safety boy all the time. I understand now why my son is so cautious. Please, if you choose to evacuate, about 60%. If you choose to barricade, and truly, thank you very much for taking this so seriously. You've really done a great job so far. So let's get, Brian, are we good? Get to our rooms?
Yep, we're good.
Let's get to our rooms.
Guys, if he's over by like the gym or something, you want if he's this way, top over yeah, you start going right here.
But wait a minute.
That's nice. Yeah. Oh, they. That was it. Absolutely. So I said this window.
What hall?
And the hall.
And remember, you need to get that information, but he's already on a different path, you know, but you just take a minute.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the thing, because we're worried.
Obviously,
If he gets a foot in that.
I would never keep it takes you 30 seconds to do it. So something like 30 seconds.
You gotta be ready to lock
I like those cola. I'm trying to think.
Oh, look, she's still hitting with
Attention everybody, we have an active shooter in the building. We have an active shooter in the building.
That's right.
Then you're sitting down.
Okay. Somehow we're not. I don't understand.
All right. Okay, we're also on the Zoom with me a small minor signature mishap. Start with Mr. Greenwald.
So I was down the hallway there. So I mean, if I was coming from the gym, I mean, obviously the shooter wouldn't be able to cut across down there. So I would just say if you're going to evacuate, yeah, be cautious the way you evacuate it, because as I came down, everybody was just running in mass across that corridor. So I got a whole lot more people that time than when people were just barricaded in. So I'm sure escaping is not a bad option, but if you're going to try to escape, you better be careful.
Well, when you come through hallways and everything, make sure you look. I mean, use your senses, give your senses time to use.
I was like, I looked out the door and I saw a pink shirt right out the doors, and so I thought that he was coming, you know, so.
That's fine. Like I said, a lot of this, especially for you teachers, a lot of it's going to be judgment calls. You're going to have to make judgment calls. Like I said, use your senses. I wish I could tell you that, hey, if the person's there, guaranteed you're going to hear an announcement that they're by the gym, and you can assume that they're by the gym. I mean, use the information. You have to kind of balance that using the information you have. Okay, I have information that he's by the gym, and I'm down here in the 180s hallway. Okay, now I'm sitting here listening. I don't hear anything. And my initial intent, just so you know, was to wait and actually give time for some of you guys to evacuate. But I actually forced his hand a little bit earlier because when they hit the air horns, that's supposed to simulate gunfire. I figured, well, now I got to put a shooter in the gunfire.
The other piece is a lot of people were evacuating. And again, we just talked about it, but our hands weren't up. Many people's were, but other people's were not.
As a cop, you just made my nightmare a reality by doing that. Because think about it. If you're running, the shooter could be running in mass with that too. Again, and even though they're there with the gun, running in a mass, maybe he's chasing a crowd, or she's chasing a crowd. Let's not be sexist here. But maybe that person's in the crowd trying to chase the crowd, and I can't see him because of the crowd. So now I'm sitting here going to where I initially heard the shots down to my left, but in reality, the shooter chased a group of people out to the right. And now I got to compensate for that too. Again, and visually, don't present a challenge. But that's just one thing. You guys improvised again. So it's total crap scenarios. How do you plan for something that's total chaos? You can't. You just plan the best you can and make the best of it.
So think about the Chinese room. So there's two doors, obviously, so it presents a danger and an interesting advantage that, tactically, they barricaded one door, and then we're looking out the other door, trying to find where the shooter was. And then we made the announcement. And then they started flooding out of the second door that was not barricaded. So we put you in an interesting situation as a result. Brian, what do you think about that?
Can I add one quick thing? Absolutely.
Bang, 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 All right, so realistically, wait a minute. Guys, how long, I'm gonna make you real for a second. How many people here, it took a good 3 seconds or more until you realized what the hell was going on? Again, yeah, He shot me first. I wasn't even looking at him. But that's exactly what can happen. Again, usually when we do this training, when we do this, and I've done it before, I had someone with like a blank gun come in to do that. So it sounds real, it looks real. And I can guarantee you, most of you would have been.
Well, even Cody just said when he did that and got up, literally everybody got out of his way. So he just ran.
Fight or flight. That's part of it too. And if that were a loud gun, I can guarantee you, most people, even in this room, even those training, would have froze, wouldn't have known what to do. If it were real in a classroom, I guarantee you that same freeze philosophy would have kicked in. That's why it's important to kind of train yourself as this is a possibility, to recognize and know that you have to do something. Help that fight or flight system. That fight or flight is there for a reason, because it helps people survive.
And the reality of our situation in the school building, well, it's probably more likely that our situations look more like that than they do what we've been kind of talking about earlier. That's why that scenario is very important. It's very important to do it in the disguised manner that it's done, because we're not searching every kid's bag. We're not looking at every kid all the time. You know, this is the way it is, and the littlest things could cause like a large grudge or all these other things that are happening. So it's that reaction, and that's the thing we can't practice and train for and work on. And none of us, as we said earlier, nobody knows how they're going to react. Nobody knows.
For those of you, again, that think that this, there's always that percentage that will. They think this is unicorns, rainbows, and fairy farms. Excuse me. But that's a common theme that you get in this neighborhood. This is Southern Lehigh. This doesn't happen. I'm going to bring in a little bit of reality again, and I can't share names. I won't do it. But my very first year here, we took a gun off a student that was walking around the building, and he had a gun in his bag, in his possessions. He didn't use it. He actually made it through the entire day by the time we got it. The only reason he didn't use it was because one of the students who was on his list was not present that day. During my interview with him, he had that gun in his bag several days. He did a couple of practice runs with it too. In my time here as a police officer in Southern Lehigh, we had a student that had a rifle that was planning on coming to school. And the jig was called for him. We actually got him at his neighbor's house, and he stole the rifle. I'm not saying this to shock you, but the reality is, this is reality. Before I came here as an officer, we had a kid 15, 20 years ago that was out in the parking lot that a rifle was taken from him. I don't know if any of your teachers were here when that happened. We've had issues. Again, the type of town we're in is a great community. I live here. My kids go here. But it's changing. Again, this summer, I spent my summer investigating homicides, shootings, and other type of crimes in this township. It's changing. The media changes. The times change. The geographics change. Everything changes. This stuff can happen, and it can happen here. And I challenge you. Read all the incident reports of Columbine, Sandy Hook. No matter what name school you put on, colleges, and public venues, no matter what it is, the people are always like this, oh, well, I would never think he would do this. Maybe they knew he or she were disturbed, but they didn't think they would ever do this, or it would never happen here. Fine, I hope it never does. But if it does, at least let's try to be prepared a little bit. Think about the possibilities, because he is very right in what he just said. That very scenario is the thing that concerns me the most here. Because percentage-wise, statistically, it's going to be a student. Not a guarantee, but the likelihood of being a student is there. And the likelihood of a student walking in, think about what a student can walk in here with. Whether it be a jacket, whether it be a bag, whether it be something in his clothing. It's very easy to do. How would you prepare for that? That's why you have to start, guys have to start thinking about this now. This whole purpose of this, again, as a first step, is the school and our way to kind of say, start thinking about this and communicating with this and use these things. Start training now in your heads in small groups. Take time in the morning when you come into the classroom. Instead of going through and organizing your day, take that one day a month and just keep going through and organizing your classroom. Okay, this is what I have in here. This stuff's still there. The nurse even brought up today, Mary Lynn brought up about the buckets that you have in there. Think about what's in your buckets, what you can use. If you don't have something in your room, like I mentioned, the cords and stuff like that, which I know every classroom will have, put something in your bucket too. It's a cheap expenditure. Everything doesn't have to be provided for you. Everything that I carry isn't provided for me by my department. There's stuff that I augment myself with. What about putting a tie-down ratcheting strap in your bucket?
Well, Brian, that's my question. Since we know the vulnerability of the doors, this is more for administration than for you. Since we know the vulnerability of the doors, is there a plan to get us precautionary things that, you know, if you take something that straps it and you put an eye hook or you put an eye hook on the wall and you can put that together?
I know that's administration for the administration, the post administration, but I would say even this. I mean, there already is, and I've said this many times. I know it's been met with resistance, and I understand the resistance. As teachers, I understand the resistance. As teachers, I have to overcome this in the next classes as we get younger in age too. There's locks in the door. For all these examples right now that we just gave, I gave him my key. We unlocked the doors for him. I mean, allowing him to do that.
Well,
that lock is the biggest deterrent that we have in almost all the classrooms right now.
And then the second thing I have is, we allow the children in this building at 7:20 when the majority of staff is not online or not on duty. And I think we create a major safety concern with that, and that's been my beef the entire time, because they just wander freely through this building. And yes, we're supposed to have people posted, but sometimes they're not here, sometimes they are. And they have access to all of these doors. And I think that creates a bigger safety concern than it does keeping them down in the cafeteria and feeding them food and making them, do those kinds of things. I just think that creates such a safety concern for everybody.
And it's valid, but discuss those things. Bring it up.
Well, that's,
I mean, but
I try to bring that up.
There's always going to be that balance. I mean, hell, I'll be blunt with you. When it came to school, the superintendent was not here, so nor Doc wasn't here either when my position came up. But my position didn't come up that year and they decide on it. My position was, even having me in the school was a several-year process.
Oh, I remember.
And some wanted it, some didn't. And even when they finally approved it, some still didn't want it here because of the perceptions.
And I can say, last year, Brian and I went to the Center for Safe Schools training, and we sat in a room with like FBI agents, state police head, and devices are devices, and almost every one of them cautioned against devices.
Because you rely on that.
You're like, oh, I have this device, it's a tool, but it's not foolproof. So as a part of the whole process,
But it provides another level of concern.
It does. I mean, and you could take that argument even further, but at least to start, we need to start with the things that we have in place and the things that are under our control. I mean, we're very.
That to me seems like a simple fix, that you have to put some kind of anchoring mechanism there that can go around the door, and that's.
But again, with going with the locks and everything, but I've been. That training we went to, there was at least a half dozen districts there that they don't even have locks on their doors yet that function. I mean, and that's a big expense. And still, it's not a guarantee.
So from a big picture structure, thinking about what we're doing next, the goal of starting today was that this quite rightly has raised a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. So centrally, administrator-wise, we're reviewing a lot of this stuff. One of the next steps in the process will be going to each building and looking for groups of teachers, administrators to sit down and say, okay, based on what we talked about, what are you worried about in your specific building? What concerns you? Talk about your routines, talk about vulnerable points in the day, all of those kind of things. With teachers who are willing to volunteer to sit down with us and go through that, then we take that information, we go back to Brian, we go back to the experts and say, okay, what's best practice around this? What can we get? If we need to purchase, we need to purchase. If we need to do other things. But again, that's going to be a team effort. It's going to be you guys pointing out what you're concerned about, because there will be things in every building that we're not thinking of. We're not in the flow all day, every day to see certain things. So we'll have small groups in every building, talk about your vulnerabilities, talk about your concerns. We then get back together, bring in those experts to say, hey, would this help? Would that help? What do you think of this? And then start to come up with those solutions. It can't happen overnight. We have to go through that process. So today was the first part, and hopefully, we talked about this. One of my concerns was this is going to raise more concerns and more questions than it answers, and that's always difficult. But that's kind of the point. We have to start somewhere, and my perspective on it is we start with you guys and we start with involving you, because you're living it every day and you're here and you need to help us out with what needs to happen next. So it's a process, and certainly we'll be putting information out and inviting people to join us. So if anybody's interested in giving us their perspective, we would really welcome that.
Can you speak a little bit to the timeline that you're thinking of for, we obviously have this training, we're now processing what we are expected to do in this kind of a situation. But, come next week, as Ryan just said, like these things happen in our districts. Like, when are the students going to get trained so that, if something were to happen next week and we're telling them to run out in the hallway, they're not saying like that's not protocol here.
Right. And that's a great question. The issue, and we even talked about this training, what if, heaven forbid, what if this had happened last week? Saying, hey, we have a training scheduled for Friday, can you come back then? You know what I mean? Like so you're always hoping this never ever happens, and there's no date, there's no predictor. So the plan is now, you know, in the next sort of month or so, we sit down, we regroup, and we start to lay out, you know, I'm a big fan of written plans with dates and timelines and deadlines, which will be shared. So we have to regroup, we have to get your input next. So in the next month or two, getting together with groups, getting your input, and then we're going to sit down and lay out a written plan with our safety group that kind of lays out the timeline for training, lays out when we're going to roll students in and those pieces. We also have to look at the levels and different things too. And I've done this several years ago. We did this through all classes, even preschool classes. We had a curriculum for preschool, but that's tough. You know, when you start with, I'm telling a kindergarten parent I'm going to train, that's very different. So I totally share your urgency. I want it done right now. But if we dive into it, we could end up causing more damage by being unprepared and not having the right information. So next month or two, we'll finish gathering the information we have, and then you can look to see something come out to all of you that says, here's the plan, here's the timeline, and then you'll know where we're going from there.
Just because I worried for numbers, what's a short-term plan for cafeteria? I know you said we do specifics, but something currently before the plan is in place. What about the cafeteria? What's a good tactic for us currently, just to kind of review?
Depends on the situation. I mean, quite frankly, it really depends on the situation and where they're coming from. I mean, you have different points of exit in that place. You have the faculty lounge, you have the back like towards where the breezeway is. You have right through the cafeteria. And that's why I wanted the cafeteria staff to be here too, because everyone's a stakeholder. I mean, regardless of what your position is, because you have kids that they may be in charge of, and they need to realize in the CAF that they can say, okay, something coming through, guys, let's go through here. Come on. I mean, kids might not even know that because they're not allowed back there. But we need to empower them to know that that's what can be done. I mean, and frankly, a lot of this is going to come on you because there is no flip chart. If you had a flip chart that said everyone must exit through the back breezeway area, what if that's where the threat's coming from? Or what if they're targeting the cafeteria specifically? I can give you scenarios. I mean, who knows? It's a crapshoot, but you have to use the information. That's why I like Alice, because Alice incorporates having all the information, giving it to you as much as possible, encouraging you all to share that information too as you get it, so that everyone can make the best educated decision that you can, as not only educators, but as protectors of our children.
Okay, I just want to make sure, this is wonderful conversation. I love I will stand here all day and talk to you, but I'm also looking at the clock and I want to make sure you get your duty-free lunch and you get time to do that stuff. So I'm not throwing you out. I'm here. I'll answer questions all day as long as you want, but I want to make sure contractually that we're supporting you and we're not holding you over lunchtime because it's getting to that time frame, okay? So thank you guys so much for your attention. I know this is fun, but
thank you, everyone.